The training grounds of the Grath were nothing like anything Aaron had seen before. They stretched far beyond the human eye could follow, covered with metallic sand that seemed to shift with each step, adjusting for the heavy weights of the massive warriors who trained there. At the edge of the field stood towering spires of black steel, carved with runes that glowed faintly with energy. This was no simple gym or arena. It was a battlefield where strength was everything, and weakness meant dishonor. Aaron adjusted the lightweight training suit the instructors had given him. It was sleek and tight-fitting, made to enhance movement rather than protect. Not that it mattered much. If one of these alien giants hit him with full force, no amount of protection would save him. The Grath were huge. Even the smallest among them dwarfed the tallest human soldier. They were a warrior race that measured worth in raw strength, size, and endurance, and among them, one stood out more than anyone else, Raza. Raza was a legend even among her kind. She was massive, weighing over 300 pounds of pure muscle. Her body a perfect blend of strength and speed. Her teal-colored skin shimmered in the sunlight, and her long, jet-black hair was tied behind her in a warrior's braid. Her eyes, a piercing silver, scanned the arena as if she owned it. Everyone respected her. Some feared her. And now, she was looking directly at him. "So you're the human they sent?" Raza's deep voice carried across the grounds like a challenge. She crossed her arms, towering over Aaron. "You look like a twig. Are you here to train or just to watch the real fighters?" Aaron swallowed hard. He had expected mockery, but hearing it so plainly still stung. He straightened his back, refusing to look away. "I'm here to train, same as anyone else." That earned him a laugh from the nearby Grath warriors. To them, a human training with their kind was a joke, an insult, even. Raza tilted her head and smirked. "Train? You wouldn't last a minute against me. I'm not here to fight you." Aaron replied calmly, though his heart was pounding in his chest. "Oh, but you are." Raza stepped closer, her heavy footsteps making the metallic sand crunch beneath her. "If you want to train here, you start with me. That's how it works. I'll crush you quickly so you can go back to your soft little world." Aaron felt every instinct in his body telling him to back down, but he couldn't. He had been sent here as part of an exchange program between humans and Grath. He was meant to represent his species, to show that humans were more than they appeared. Walking away now would mean proving every insult true. "Fine," he said, surprising even himself with how steady his voice sounded. "I'll fight you." The warriors around them roared with excitement. They loved a good spectacle, and this was sure to be one. A tiny human against Raza. It was practically entertainment. Raza grinned, showing sharp teeth. "Try not to break too quickly." They moved to the center of the training ground. The metallic sand adjusted itself beneath their feet, creating a solid platform for combat. Aaron took a deep breath, trying to remember every lesson he had learned back in human training camps. He couldn't win with strength. That was impossible. But maybe, just maybe, he could last long enough to prove himself. "Begin," shouted one of the Grath instructors. Raza didn't waste time. She charged like a thunderstorm, her massive frame moving with surprising speed. Aaron barely dodged her first strike, feeling the wind of her arm as it whooshed past his head. He rolled to the side, coming up in a crouch. She turned, amused. "You're fast, but it won't save you." Aaron didn't reply. He couldn't afford to. He stayed low, watching her movements. She was powerful but predictable. She led with her right arm, favoring heavy swings over quick jabs. If he could stay out of her reach, he might last a little longer. Raza lunged again, this time trying to grab him. Aaron darted between her legs, using his smaller size to his advantage. He could hear laughter from the crowd, some mocking, some impressed. "Clever little insect," Raza said, spinning to face him. "But you can't run forever." Aaron felt his legs burning already. The gravity here was heavier than Earth's, and every movement took more effort. He needed to end this quickly. But how could he? She was a wall of muscle, and one wrong move would end him. He decided to try something different when Raza charged. Again, instead of running, he dashed toward her, sliding under her arm and striking her side with his elbow. It was like hitting a steel beam. Pain shot up his arm, but it made her pause. That pause was worth it. The crowd went silent for a moment, then erupted with cheers and laughter. A human had landed a hit, small and meaningless, but still a hit, on Raza. Raza blinked, surprised, then grinned. Interesting. Aaron knew what that grin meant. She was done playing. Before he could react, she moved faster than he thought possible. Her massive hand grabbed him by the front of his training suit and lifted him off the ground, as if he weighed nothing. "You lasted longer than I thought," she said with a smirk. But playtime's over. Aaron struggled, kicking against her, but it was useless. She walked toward the center of the arena and dropped him onto the metallic sand. "Stay down," she said, towering over him. But Aaron didn't stay down. Slowly, painfully, he pushed himself back to his feet. His legs trembled, his lungs burned, but he stood. Raza raised an eyebrow. "Still moving. You've got spirit. I like that. But spirit won't keep you alive." She crouched slightly, preparing for her final move. The crowd fell silent, sensing the end. Aaron didn't know what he was doing anymore. He only knew he couldn't quit. Not here. Not in front of them. And then Raza roared, leaping toward him with both feet shaking the ground. "I'll crush you, human." The world blurred as her shadow fell over him. To be continued. At the last possible moment, Aaron threw himself sideways, hitting the metallic sand hard and rolling to escape the crushing force of Raza's landing. The ground trembled where she had aimed to pin him, leaving a dent in the reinforced surface. If he had stayed still for even half a second longer, it would have been over. Gasps and laughter filled the arena. The Grath warriors loved every second of the spectacle. This was entertainment for them, a test of wills between an enormous champion and a tiny outsider who refused to quit. Raza stood slowly, her grin growing wider. "You keep running, little human. That will not save you for long." Aaron stayed on his feet, breathing heavily. His body ached from the strain, but he couldn't show weakness. He couldn't let them see him quit. "I'm not running. I'm surviving." That answer caught her off guard for a moment. She tilted her head, studying him. It was a strange thing for a Grath to hear. To them, survival meant crushing the opponent, proving dominance, standing unshaken in the middle of battle. But this human spoke of survival as if it was its own kind of victory. "Strange words," she said, circling him now. Her movements were slower, measured. "You fight like prey, but prey that refuses to die." Aaron didn't respond. He focused on her feet, on the rhythm of her movement. He couldn't fight her in strength. That was hopeless. But he could outthink her. Every opponent had habits. He needed to find hers. "You think too much," Raza said, as if reading his mind. "That will not help you when I crush you." She lunged again, swinging her massive arm in a wide arc. Aaron ducked under it, feeling the wind of her strike whip past his head. He countered with a quick jab to her ribs. It did nothing but make his knuckles hurt. But he had expected that. It wasn't about damage. It was about getting inside her. Guard, learning her reactions, Raza laughed, spinning with surprising speed and backhanding him across the arena. The blow wasn't full strength. She wasn't trying to kill him, but it still felt like being hit by a speeding vehicle. Aaron tumbled across the metallic sand, groaning as he came to a stop. The crowd erupted in laughter and cheers. To them, this was sport, but a few of the younger warriors whispered to each other, impressed by how long the human kept standing. Aaron pushed himself up again. His body screamed in protest, but he ignored it. He could not quit. Raza watched him with a curious expression now. The mockery in her eyes had softened into something closer to intrigue. "You are stubborn. I like that. Most who faced me stay down after one strike." Aaron wiped the blood from his lip. "Maybe they weren't human." The words earned another laugh from the onlookers. Even Raza chuckled, shaking her head. "You have fire, small one. But fire burns out quickly." Aaron took a deep breath, centering himself. He couldn't keep letting her control the fight. He needed to turn her strength against her. "Come on then," he said, trying to sound braver than he felt. "Let's see what you've really got." That taunt worked. Raza's grin widened, and she charged again. This time, Aaron didn't dodge backward. He sprinted toward her, closing the gap faster than she expected. At the last second, he dropped to the ground, sliding between her legs and springing up behind her. Before she could turn, he leapt onto her back, locking his arms around her thick neck in a chokehold. The crowd erupted in surprise. A human climbing onto a Grath warrior like that? Unthinkable. Raza reached back, trying to grab him, but his smaller size worked in his favor. He clung on like a stubborn insect. "You are bold," she said, her voice vibrating with laughter and mild annoyance. "But this will not work." Aaron tightened his grip, though he knew it wasn't enough to make her lose consciousness. It was about proving he wasn't afraid, proving he could make her take him seriously. Raza stopped struggling for a moment. Then, with a grunt, she bent her knees and threw herself backward. Aaron barely had time to react before her full weight slammed into the metallic sand, crushing the air out of his lungs. He gasped in pain, his vision going white for a moment. Raza rolled off him, standing tall again as he coughed and struggled to breathe. "You lasted longer than I thought," she said, offering him a hand. Aaron looked up at her. For a moment, he thought she was mocking him again, but her expression had changed. She wasn't laughing at him anymore. She was acknowledging him. He took her hand, and she pulled him to his feet with ease. "You fought like prey," she said, "but you also fought like something else, something unexpected." Aaron steadied himself, his legs shaking. "I told you, I'm not just here to fight, I'm here to learn." That made her pause. The Grath didn't usually think about learning in combat. For them, training was about proving strength, not adapting. But this human spoke as if every loss was a lesson. It was strange, intriguing. "You are a strange little human," Raza said finally. "But I think I want to see how long you can last against me next time." Aaron smirked, though every part of his body hurt. "Next time, I'll do better." The crowd began to disperse, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others murmuring that maybe humans weren't as useless as they thought. As Aaron limped toward the resting area, he couldn't help but feel a spark of pride. He had survived. Barely, but survival was enough for today. Raza watched him go, her silver eyes narrowed in thought. This human was small, fragile, and weak by her people's standards. But there was something about him that unsettled her, something that made her curious. Perhaps this fight wasn't over. To be continued. The next day, the training grounds were quieter, but the whispers had not stopped. Everywhere Aaron walked, he could feel the stares of the Grath warriors. Some were amused, some were annoyed, and a few seemed strangely thoughtful. They had all seen the fight yesterday. They had seen a human, small and fragile by their standards, refuse to stay down against Raza. For the Grath, that meant something. They respected those who stood back up no matter how many times they were knocked down. Even if Aaron had been tossed around like a toy, he had not given up. Aaron, however, did not feel respected. He felt sore. Every muscle in his body ached from yesterday's fight, and the bruises on his arms and chest made every step painful. But he pushed himself forward. He could not afford to look weak. He reached the center of the training field, where the morning drills were already starting. The Grath warriors moved in perfect unison, their enormous bodies bending, twisting, and striking with terrifying speed. Aaron stood at the edge, watching carefully. He knew he would need to find a way to train with them, even if he could not match their strength. "Little human," a familiar voice called. Aaron turned to see Raza approaching. She was dressed in lighter training armor today, her long braids swinging behind her. Her silver eyes glinted as she looked him over. "You came back. I thought you might run home to your soft world." Aaron smirked despite his pain. "And miss another chance to get thrown across the arena?" "No way." That earned a laugh from her. "You are strange. I like it." The other Grath warriors stopped their drills, watching the exchange. Raza was one of the strongest among them, and her attention on the human was unusual. Some of them muttered quietly, wondering why she was even wasting her time. Raza stepped closer, towering over him. "Do you know why you lost yesterday?" Aaron crossed his arms. "Because you're 3 times my size and built like a wall." Raza shook her head. "That too. But you lost because you fought like prey. You only reacted. You need to fight like a hunter, Aaron frowned. And how exactly does someone my size hunt a giant like you? Raza grinned. You do not try to overpower me. You make me fight on your terms. Her words caught his attention. It was strange hearing that from her. She was a warrior who could simply crush most opponents. Why would she suggest that strength was not everything? Are you saying I can win against you? Aaron asked. Raza tilted her head. Not today. Not tomorrow. But maybe one day, if you stop thinking like prey. Aaron wasn't sure if she was teasing him or genuinely trying to help, but he knew she was right about one thing. His only chance of survival here was to fight differently. He couldn't try to match the Grath in strength. He needed to use what made humans unique. Fine. He said, teach me. Raza raised an eyebrow. Teach you? Why would I waste my time on that? Aaron met her gaze. Because you want to. See if I can do it. You want a challenge? For a moment, silence passed between them. Then Raza laughed again, louder this time. You are bold, little human. Very well. I will teach you. But do not cry when I break you again. Aaron winced. I'll try not to. The training that followed was unlike anything Aaron had done before. Raza didn't bother teaching him basic strikes. She knew he already knew them. Instead, she forced him into exercises that tested his endurance, speed, and reaction time again. She barked as Aaron struggled to dodge her sweeping attacks. You think too much. Do not think. Move. He ducked under her arm, panting. Heavily. Easy for you to say. You don't have to worry about being flattened. Raza smirked. Then stop worrying and learn. Hour after hour, she pushed him harder. When he faltered, she knocked him down. When he hesitated, she punished him with another strike. But every time, she pulled him back up. The other warriors watched with mixed reactions. Some laughed at the sight of their champion training a human. Others looked quietly impressed. By midday, Aaron was drenched in sweat, his arms shaking from exhaustion. But he noticed something. He was lasting longer. He was starting to predict her movements, slipping past her strikes with a little more ease each time. You learn quickly, Raza admitted as they paused for water. Slower than a Grath child, but quickly for a human. Aaron took a deep breath. Thanks, I think. Raza sat beside him, her massive frame casting a shadow over his small one. Tell me, little human, why do you fight? You could live a quiet life on your world. Why risk death here? Aaron looked at the ground for a moment. It wasn't a question. He had expected. Because I want to prove something. To you, to your people, maybe even to mine. Humans can do more than you think. We belong out here, among the stars. Raza studied him, her expression unreadable. You are weak, small, and fragile. But she paused, then nodded. You are not like other prey. You refuse to die. That is something even the Grath respect. Her words surprised him. It wasn't exactly praise, but coming from her, it felt like it. They returned to training, and as the sun dipped lower, Raza ended the session with one final test. Hit me, she said, standing still. Aaron blinked. What? Hit me, she repeated. Use everything you have. He knew it wouldn't hurt her, but he did as told. He threw his best punch at her side. She didn't even flinch. Again, she said. He hit her again, and again, each time harder, faster, more focused. Finally, she caught his fist mid-swing. Better, but you still think like prey. Tomorrow, you will think like a hunter. Aaron sighed. Exhausted. Can I think like a hunter while lying down? Because I don't think I can walk. Raza laughed, patting his shoulder hard enough to nearly knock him over. Rest, little human. Tomorrow, we begin real training. As Aaron limped back to his quarters, he couldn't help but smile despite the pain. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was learning. And maybe, just maybe, he was starting to earn her respect. To be continued. The next morning, Aaron woke before the training bell even rang. His body still ached from the previous day, but his mind was sharper than it had been since his arrival. He was starting to see patterns in the way the Grath trained and how they moved and fought. Everything about them screamed brute force, but within that force were predictable rhythms. He could use that. He left his quarters early, walking toward the training grounds. The air was cool, and the metallic sand beneath his boots crunched. Softly as he crossed the vast arena, he could already see Raza standing there, waiting. She was early too. "You were awake before the bell," she said. Raising an eyebrow, "I figured if I can't be stronger than you, I can at least be earlier." Aaron replied, trying to sound casual. Raza chuckled, folding her arms. "You are learning. Good. A hunter rises before their prey." Aaron had grown, used to her calling him prey, though it no longer felt like pure insult. It was her way of reminding him where he stood in their hierarchy. But the more time they trained together, the more he sensed a shift in her tone. She didn't just see him as something weak anymore. Their training started with more of her movement tests. As she called them, she swung at him with wide arcs, her speed frightening for someone her size, and forced him to dodge again and again. "Do not think," she barked as he narrowly avoided another strike. "If you think, you die. Trust your body. Trust the rhythm." Aaron ducked under her next swing, panting. "Easy for you to say. You weigh more than a tank." Raza smirked, "Then use that against me. The bigger the beast, the slower it turns. Learn to be faster." They repeated the drill for over an hour. By the end, Aaron's legs felt like lead, but he noticed something remarkable. He wasn't just avoiding her strikes anymore. He was starting to predict them, moving just before she attacked. "Better," Raza said, nodding with approval. "You are finally starting to look like a fighter, not just prey." "Thanks," Aaron said between breaths, "but I'm still pretty sure you could crush me whenever you want." Raza grinned. "Of course. But now I have to work a little harder." Her words made him pause. Was that her way of admitting he was improving? After the drills, they took a break near the edge of the training field. Raza sat cross-legged, her massive frame towering even while she rested. Aaron sat beside her, feeling like a child next to a statue. "Why do you keep training me?" he asked after a moment. "I'm no threat to you. You could be sparring with someone who actually challenges you." Raza stared ahead for a long moment before answering. "Because you are different. You do not fight like us. You do not even think like us. Most warriors, when beaten, lose their will. But you get back up." Again and again Aaron frowned. "You sound surprised by that." "I am," she admitted. "The Grath train their whole lives to endure pain. It is in our blood. But you are not bred for this, and yet you endure. I want to see how far that can go." Her words caught Aaron off guard. He wasn't sure if that was respect or just curiosity, but it felt like something had shifted between them. "You know," he said, leaning back on his hands. "Where I come from, strength isn't just about size or muscles. It's about adapting, surviving no matter what gets thrown at you." Raza looked at him with interest. "Adapting," she repeated slowly. "That is not how the Grath see strength. We believe true strength is crushing your enemy with all your might. And how often does that work against enemies stronger than you?" Aaron asked. That made her pause. She did not answer right away, and he could tell the question had unsettled her. Finally, she said, "Perhaps there is more than one kind of strength." They sat in silence for a while, watching the other Grath warriors train in the distance. Aaron had never imagined he would have a conversation like this with someone who once promised to crush him. But here they were, talking about what strength really meant. Before long, the instructor called for the day's combat trials, a set of sparring matches that paired warriors randomly. Aaron expected to be placed with another trainee, someone closer to his size. Instead, Raza stepped forward. "I want him." The instructor frowned. "Raza, this is unnecessary. He has barely trained a week." Raza ignored the protest. "If he is to learn, he must fight me again." The other Grath whispered among themselves. This was no casual sparring match. This was a statement. Aaron swallowed his nerves. He had survived one fight with her. Could he survive another? The arena cleared, leaving them both in the center. "Same rules?" Aaron asked, stretching his sore arms. "No rules," Raza said with a grin. "Show me what you have learned." The match began, and Raza lunged with the same terrifying speed as before. But this time, Aaron was ready. He sidestepped, barely avoiding her strike, and struck her side with a quick jab. It did no real damage, but it made her turn faster than she wanted to. Good, she said. Circling him, do it again. They exchanged blow after blow, Aaron darting in and out of her reach. He was still far from her equal, but he could feel the difference. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was adapting. But then Raza feinted, a trick move, and caught him off guard. Her hand shot out, grabbing him by the arm and flipping him onto the ground. The impact knocked the wind out of him. Still prey, she said with a smirk. Aaron coughed, forcing himself to roll away and stand up. Maybe, but I'm not easy prey. The match continued until Aaron could no longer stand. He was exhausted, bruised, and covered in sweat, but Raza didn't mock him. She offered him her hand again. You lasted longer, she said simply. Aaron took her hand and let her pull him up. One of these days, he said between gasps, I might actually win. Raza chuckled. Perhaps, and when you do, you will no longer be prey. As they walked off the field together, Aaron realized something had changed. She no longer saw him as just a tiny human playing at being a warrior. She saw him as a fighter. And for the first time, since arriving in this alien world, he felt like he truly belonged. To be continued. The days that followed blurred together in a cycle of bruises, sweat, and lessons that Aaron would never forget. He was no longer the strange outsider who had stumbled into the Grath training grounds. He was a regular sight now, moving among the towering warriors as if he belonged there. Raza trained him harder than anyone else. She never went easy on him, never gave him more rest than he needed, and never let him forget his weaknesses. Yet, in her own way, she also taught him how to survive. She had forced him to adapt to their heavy gravity environment, to sharpen his reflexes, to read the flow of a fight, rather than simply reacting to it. You are learning, she said one morning as they sparred in a quieter section of the arena. But you still hold back. Why? Aaron wiped sweat from his brow, panting. Because if I go all out, I'll probably just break my hand on you. She smirked at that. Then learn how to strike without breaking. A hunter uses precision, not brute force. He nodded. It wasn't about hitting harder. It was about hitting smarter. That day's training ended earlier than usual when a deep, echoing horn sounded across the grounds. Every Grath warrior stopped mid-drill. Turning toward the sound, Aaron felt the air shift. Whatever that horn meant, it wasn't part of their usual routine. Raz's expression darkened. That is the alarm. An enemy is near. Aaron blinked. Enemy? I thought we were at peace. With most, Raza said, her voice tense. But not all. Before he could ask more, the instructors began shouting orders. Grath warriors hurried to the armory, preparing for something Aaron had never seen in his time here. Real battle. Come with me, Raza commanded. He followed her to the edge of the training grounds, where a massive wall of black steel loomed. The top of the wall bristled with weapon emplacements. Beyond it, the horizon stretched out into the barren alien wilderness. Aaron squinted, trying to see what the Grath were preparing for. And then he saw them. At first, they looked like shadows, moving in the distance, but as they grew closer, he could make out their shapes. They were huge, almost as tall as the Grath, with jagged armor plating that glinted under the sun. Their movements were quick and deliberate, like predators on the hunt. Who are they? Aaron asked, his voice low. Raza's hands tightened into fists. Raiders. They come from beyond the outer sectors. They live for nothing but destruction. They are not here for peace. Aaron felt his stomach twist. He had trained to fight Raza, to spar against the Grath, but this was different. These weren't practice opponents. These were killers. How many? He asked. Raza's silver eyes narrowed. Enough to test us. The raiders moved in a loose formation, carrying heavy weapons and shields made from scavenged parts. They didn't look organized, but there was a deadly intelligence in the way they advanced. The horn sounded again, and the gates of the Grath stronghold opened. Stay behind me, Raza said as she stepped forward, her heavy combat armor activating. With a faint hum. Aaron hesitated. You're actually going out there. She turned to him, her expression serious. This is what we do. You are not ready for this fight, but you can learn by surviving it. Stay close to me. And do not wonder, Aaron wanted to argue, but he could tell by her tone there was no point. He grabbed a smaller weapon from the rack, a lightweight staff designed for speed rather than power, and followed her out of the gates. The ground outside the walls felt different, rougher and less stable. Aaron kept his eyes locked on the approaching figures as his heart pounded in his chest. This wasn't like sparring in the safety of the arena. This was real. The Grath warriors formed a defensive line. They looked like a wall of living steel, their massive frames and heavy armor making them seem unshakable. Raza stood at the front, her presence commanding as always. When the raiders came within range, they stopped, as if assessing their opponents. For a long moment, the two sides just stared at each other, the tension building like a storm ready to break. Then one of the raiders let out a guttural roar and charged. The rest followed. The clash was brutal. The Grath met them with a force that shook the ground. Weapons clashed, sparks flew, and the air filled with the sound of battle cries and metal striking metal. Aaron stayed behind Raza as instructed, using his staff to block smaller strikes from raiders who managed to slip through the Grath line. Every movement felt clumsy, every breath sharp and shallow, but he forced himself to keep going. Raza, on the other hand, moved like a storm. She struck with devastating power, each swing of her weapon dropping an enemy where they stood. Aaron had seen her fight before, but never like this. In training, she held back. Here, she fought like a true Grath warrior, fierce, relentless, unstoppable. But even she couldn't be everywhere at once. Behind you, Aaron shouted as a raider lunged at her from the side. Raza twisted, blocking the strike just in time. She didn't thank him. There was no time, but her glance told him she had heard. The fight dragged on, and Aaron's arms ached from blocking blows. He wasn't strong enough to overpower his opponents. But he remembered Raza's words. Precision over brute force. He started aiming for weak points, striking at joints and unarmored spots. It didn't always work, but when it did, it bought him precious seconds. One raider broke through the line and charged directly at him. Aaron froze for a heartbeat, then sidestepped at the last moment, driving his staff into the back of the creature's knee. It stumbled, and before it could recover, Raza was there, slamming it to the ground with a single blow. You are learning, she said between strikes. Aaron didn't feel like he was learning. He felt like he was surviving by luck alone. But he stayed close to her, moving when she moved, trusting her to cover him when he made mistakes. Eventually, the horn sounded again, this time signaling retreat. The surviving raiders pulled back, disappearing into the horizon as quickly as they had come. The battlefield fell silent. Aaron stood frozen, his chest heaving. He couldn't believe it. He was still alive. Raza planted her weapon into the ground, scanning the retreating figures. They will be back, she said quietly. Aaron wiped the sweat and grime from his face. Then we'll be ready for them, she turned to him, her silver eyes meeting his, for the first time since they met. There was no mockery in her gaze, only respect. You fought well, little human, she said. Not like prey. Not today. Aaron didn't know what to say. He only knew one thing. Whatever respect he had earned from her today, he would have to keep earning. And next time, he would be ready. To be continued. The battlefield was quiet now, but the silence was heavy. The metallic sand was marked with deep grooves from weapons, and the smell of burned metal still hung in the air. The Grath warriors moved among the fallen, checking for wounded and gathering weapons left behind by the raiders. Aaron stood near the gate, his staff still clutched tightly in his hands. His arms were trembling, though he didn't know if it was from exhaustion or the rush of what had just happened. He had fought for his life, not in a sparring match, not in training, but against a real enemy who wanted him dead, and somehow he had survived. Raza approached him, her armor scorched in a few places, but otherwise intact. Her presence was as solid as always, but Aaron noticed she was quieter than usual. You held your ground, she said, stopping in front of him. Aaron let out a shaky laugh. I mostly held on for dear life. Good, she replied simply. That means you still live. And you learned. He frowned. Learned what? That I'm not ready for this? Because I already knew that. Raza tilted her head. You learned to trust your instincts. You survived, and that is more than some of our warriors can say. Her words sank in slowly. He had seen Grath fall in that fight. Giants who seemed unstoppable during training had been cut down by the raiders. It chilled him to realize just how dangerous their enemies were. As they walked back through the gates, Aaron noticed the stares of the other warriors. They didn't laugh at him anymore. They didn't whisper like they used to. Instead, they nodded, brief, silent acknowledgments. They had seen him fight. He had earned at least a little of their respect, but the moment of calm didn't last. Inside the stronghold, the leaders of the Grath gathered in the war room, a circular chamber filled with glowing maps and shifting holograms. Aaron had never been allowed in before, but Raza brought him along. The oldest among them, a scarred warrior, named Draxon, spoke first. The raiders are testing us. They want to see our weaknesses. This will not be their last attack. They are not afraid, another warrior said. If anything, they grow bolder. Raza stood tall, her arms crossed. Then we make them afraid. We strike before they gather strength. Aaron listened quietly, unsure if he should even be there. But as the warriors argued about whether to wait or attack, he noticed something on the map. Excuse me, he said, stepping forward. The warriors turned to him, their eyes narrowing. Draxon growled. The human speaks. Aaron swallowed his nerves. Look at this, he said, pointing to a section of the map where the raiders had retreated. You said they come from beyond the outer sectors, right? Then why would they retreat? Toward this canyon instead of back into open terrain? It looks like they're regrouping somewhere close. Raza glanced at the map, then at him. You think they have a forward base? Aaron nodded. It makes sense. They wouldn't attack and leave so quickly unless they were testing defenses for a bigger strike. The room fell silent. The Grath had been preparing for another defensive fight, but none had considered that the raiders might already have a staging ground nearby. Draxon grunted. If the human is right, then we are already surrounded. We are not surrounded, Raza said firmly. Not yet, but if we wait, we will be. She turned to Aaron. You may be small, but you see things others do not. That is useful. Aaron blinked. Are you agreeing with me? Raza smirked. Do not get used to it. The council debated for hours, but in the end, they agreed to send a scouting party to the canyon. Raza volunteered to lead it. I'm coming too, Aaron said immediately. Raza raised an eyebrow. You can barely lift your arms. I can still walk, Aaron said. And you need someone to see what you might miss. She studied him for a moment, then nodded. Stay close to me. If you fall behind, I will not carry you. Fair. Enough, he said, though his stomach knotted with nerves. That night, they prepared for the mission. Aaron sat in his quarters, cleaning his weapon. His hands were steadier now. He wasn't sure if that was because of confidence or simply because he was too tired to feel fear anymore. A knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. It was Raza. You are quiet, she said, stepping inside without asking. Just thinking, Aaron replied. About dying, she asked bluntly. He gave a small laugh, something like that. She sat across from him, the floor creaking under her weight. You fought well today, better than I expected. But tomorrow will be harder. The raiders will not run. They will fight to keep their ground. Aaron nodded. Then I'll just have to be harder to kill. That made her grin. Good, you are finally starting to sound like a warrior. They left at dawn. The canyon was a harsh place, filled with jagged rocks and deep shadows. Every sound echoed strangely, making it impossible to tell where danger might come from. Aaron stayed close to Raza, his staff ready, his eyes scanning for movement. Halfway through the canyon, they found it, the raiders' forward camp. It was larger than expected, filled with makeshift shelters and supply crates. Dozens of raiders moved around, preparing for something big. They are planning a siege, Raza whispered. Aaron felt his chest tighten. Then we need to warn the others. But before they could retreat, a sharp whistle cut through the air. The raiders had seen them. They came fast, weapons raised, their guttural roars echoing off the canyon walls. Aaron's heart pounded, but he forced himself to stand his ground. Raza drew her blade. Stay behind me, she said, But when the first raider lunged at them, Aaron didn't stay behind. He moved to the side, striking low at its legs as Raza cut it down from above. They fought as a unit, each covering the other's blind spots. For the first time, it felt like more than survival. It felt like they were winning. But as more raiders poured from the camp, Aaron knew this wasn't just a fight for survival. It was the turning point to be continued. The canyon shook with the sound of battle cries. The raiders had seen them, and now they poured from their camp like a swarm of armored predators. Aaron gripped his staff tightly, his knuckles white. Every instinct screamed at him to run. But he forced himself to stay rooted beside Raza. "Stay alive," Raza said without looking at him. Her voice steadied despite the chaos. "I plan to," Aaron replied, though his voice came out shakier than he wanted. The first raider charged, swinging a jagged blade. Aaron stepped aside just in time, feeling the rush of air as the weapon missed him by inches. He struck low at the raider's legs, just like Raza had taught him, and managed to knock it off balance. Before it could recover, Raza came down like a storm, her blade cutting through its armor. "Good," she said, glancing at him briefly. "Do that again." They fought side by side, their movements almost in rhythm now. Raza's raw power tore through their enemies while Aaron darted around, striking at weak points, distracting foes, and covering her flanks. What he lacked in strength, he made up for in speed and precision. But the raiders kept coming. "They're trying to surround us," Aaron shouted. "Then we break through," Raza growled. She pushed forward, forcing a gap in the enemy line. Aaron followed close behind, his heart hammering as he swung and blocked, doing everything he could to stay alive. Every step forward felt like a battle on its own. They fought through the narrow canyon, the sound of metal clashing against metal echoing off the walls. Aaron's arms burned. His legs felt heavy, but he refused to stop. Then he saw it, the largest raider yet, towering even over Raza, stepping out from the camp. Its armor was thicker, its weapon larger, and its roar made the ground tremble. "Great," Aaron muttered, because this wasn't hard enough already. Raza's grip on her blade tightened. "That is their leader." The massive raider pointed its weapon at them and charged. Raza stepped forward to meet it, but Aaron grabbed her arm. "You can't fight it alone," he said. She looked down at him, surprised. "You think you can help me take it down?" "I don't think," Aaron said, his voice firmer now. "I know." For a moment, Raza just stared at him. Then she nodded once. "Then do not fail." The leader swung its weapon in a wide arc. Raza blocked the strike, but the force sent her skidding back. Aaron used the opening to dart in, striking at the creature's knee joint. It barely flinched, but it was enough to distract it for a second. "Again," Raza shouted. They worked together, Raza keeping its attention while Aaron aimed for its weak points. Every time it swung at Raza, Aaron was there to jab at its legs or arms, forcing it to split its focus. But even with their combined effort, the leader was strong. Too strong. It knocked Raza to the ground with a heavy strike, turning its attention fully to Aaron. He froze for half a heartbeat as the massive creature loomed over him. Then he remembered her words. "Do not think. Move." Aaron ducked under its next swing, rolling across the ground and coming up behind it. He saw a gap in its armor at the back of its knee and struck with everything he had. The leader stumbled forward, roaring in anger. That was all Raza needed. With a fierce cry, she surged back to her feet and swung her blade with all her strength, cutting deep into the leader's torso. The massive raider staggered, then collapsed with a thunderous crash. The rest of the raiders hesitated at the sight of their leader falling. Then, one by one, they began to retreat, disappearing back into the canyon shadows. The battle was over. Aaron dropped to one knee, his chest heaving. Every part of his body ached, but he was alive. Raza stood over the fallen leader, breathing heavily. Her armor was dented, and blood trickled down one arm, but she looked as unshakable as ever. She turned to Aaron. "You did well." He let out a shaky laugh. "I didn't die. That's my new definition of well." Raza walked over and extended her hand. Aaron took it, and she pulled him to his feet effortlessly. "You are no longer prey," she said simply. Aaron blinked. What? You fought like a hunter, she said, her silver eyes locked on his. You saw weakness. You struck with purpose. You survived when others would have fallen. That is what it means to be a warrior. Her words hit him harder than any blow. She wasn't just praising him. She was acknowledging him as one of them. The rest of the Grath scouting party arrived soon after, having fought their way through smaller groups of raiders. When they saw the leader's body, their expression shifted from shock to something like respect. You killed their commander, one of them said to Raza. Raza shook her head. We killed it, she corrected, glancing at Aaron. The Grath looked at him with new eyes. He wasn't just the strange little human anymore. He was someone who had stood with them in battle and lived. As they made their way back to the stronghold, Aaron felt something he hadn't since coming here, belonging. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was part of something bigger. That night, as the stronghold celebrated their victory, Aaron sat beside Raza near the fire. You know, he said, when I first got here, I thought I'd last maybe a day. Before you crushed me, you almost did, she said with a grin. He chuckled. Yeah, but now, he paused, staring into the flames. Now I think I could get used to this. Raza tilted her head. To fighting? To proving that humans belong out here, he said. She nodded. Then keep proving it every day. Aaron looked at her and smiled. Deal. For the first time since leaving his homeworld, he didn't feel like an outsider. He felt like a warrior. He felt like he belonged. And he knew this was only the beginning.